Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Tuesday, November 20th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news and try to answer some of your questions at the mailbag. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Now, alert listeners might notice that we have not had a water cooler this week. That's because a bunch of our staff is traveling or sick, and we're hoping to have our regular water cooler segment of the week tomorrow, but if not, we will have it on Monday of next week, so you can look out for it then. But let's jump into the news, and as I predicted, my prediction came true, guys. I mean, I am a psychic. The news slowed down to like a really like almost a halt. We have very little to go on here, but we'll try to make the most out of it, and then we'll jump into the bag of mail. But let's start off first with the idea that Mark Hamill pitched George Lucas for Boba Fett when the first movies came out. Chris, tell us about this.
Yeah, this almost sounds like it's a joke, but Mark Hamill confirmed it's real, unless he's playing a really long game with this joke. But according to him, he originally pitched the idea that Boba Fett would be Luke's mother in the films, and that was a way to top Vader being Luke's father. And he even pitched this idea to George Lucas, and as we all know, George Lucas did not go for this, so Boba Fett did not turn out to be Luke's mother in disguise.
I don't know. To me, this sounds like an incredible idea, Chris. If the helmet came off and if Boba Fett was Luke Skywalker's mom, I'm kidding.
Sure.
This is not an incredible idea. HT, what do you think of this idea?
This sounds like a joke to me. Are we sure Mark Hamill wasn't joking?
That's what I said, but I really don't know. It seems like this is something he really pitched at the time. So,
Well, I mean, keep in mind that he probably pitched this after like Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, I'm assuming it was after Empire because that's when the twist was with Vader, and we had only known that Boba Fett was going after Han Solo at that time. We didn't really. I mean, I guess that's all we knew, right? But.
Yeah, I mean, other than liking the idea of Boba Fett turning out to be a woman, which would have been a very cool reveal for all the people who inexplicably worship Boba Fett as a character. That would have been a cool one, but this idea sounds bad.
Yeah. I also vote. Chris, did you like this idea?
No, this is dumb. But you never know. Maybe they would have found a way to make it really clever back then. But it should go without saying, Boba Fett as he is now is pretty dumb. There's nothing to that character. So this at least would have given him some sort of backstory, or I guess her some sort of backstory. But overall, this is not a great idea.
We're really running low on news, if you can't tell, guys. Let's just move on to our next story, and that is that Aquaman, the majority of Aquaman will be presented in full-screen IMAX. HT, tell us about it.
Yeah, so Aquaman director James Wan confirmed that almost 90% of the movie will be in full IMAX aspect ratio. This was in response to a question from a fan on Twitter who asked if there are any scenes in the full aspect ratio, which is the sort of crisp, high-resolution ratio without the black bars that you see in most films. And James Wan responded, roughly 90%, nearly the whole movie, seriously. So this will be a big portion of the film, and probably one of the biggest portions of a blockbuster film that's shot in with IMAX technology. We've seen.
Well, it's not shot with IMAX. It's being presented.
IMAX aspect ratio.
Yeah, I should. I've seen Aquaman. I can say that. I cannot say what I thought of the movie. I'm wondering, can I say what because James Wan was there after the screening. I had a conversation with him that's relevant to this, and I'm wondering if it's something I could talk about.
Do it.
Oh, fuck
Go
it.
for
Yeah,
it.
okay, I'm going for it.
Dangerously.
Yeah, no, we were talking about this because he brought up that he did not shoot the movie in IMAX. I did not see it in IMAX, but I was commenting that it might be interesting to see the movie in 3D because it has a lot of kind of interesting, whatever. And he was like, he brought this up. He said that he did not shoot the movie in IMAX, but during the editing process, he realized that, well, first of all, like 90% of the movie is kind of CG in some way, like, if it's under the water or whatever. So they could render, that extra room for the IMAX ratio very easy. And he basically decided in the post-production process to make it an IMAX movie. And apparently there's some kind of clever way to get into it, or how it, the screen expands and stuff. But I will not ruin that. Not that I even saw that, but yeah, I'm actually interested to see it in IMAX because I'm actually a fan of these IMAX releases when it is actually a majority of the film and not just like a scene or two, or when you have Michael Bay and it's like, every other shot just changes inexplicably between the two aspect ratios. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, are you a fan of seeing movies that have the larger aspect ratio?
I am equally bothered. I'm also bothered by changing aspect ratios in movies. While I do like how beautiful and stunning these IMAX sequences look, it does sometimes take me out of the movie when we see one big action sequence in IMAX and then suddenly we cut to a scene with the aspect ratio smaller again. So I would rather have one aspect ratio, and I would like to see maybe how James Wan pulls this off, and if it is streamlined into the movie as you said it is.
Yeah. Chris, what about you? Are you a fan of the larger aspect ratio?
Yeah, it depends on how it's done. I think Christopher Nolan is really good at exploiting this. He's very good at opening up big sequences. He doesn't really cut back and forth. He does this thing where it'll be one long sequence in IMAX and then it'll cut back to the regular aspect ratio. So when it's done like that, I don't mind it. But if it's done back and forth, it can get a little distracting.
So what you're saying is Christopher Nolan plans things out.
Yes, he's good at his job, is what I'm saying.
Okay, let's move on to we were talking about ridiculous ideas with Mark Hamill and Star Wars, and Sylvester Stallone revealed his original idea for Rocky III, which involved hanging out with the Pope. Chris, what is going on here?
Yeah, so this is actually an archival interview. This interview is from 1979, but no one has really noticed it for some reason. So at the time, Stallone, first of all, he said that Rocky III would be the final Rocky movie. He even says in this interview, there will never be a Rocky IV, and we all know how that turned out to be not true. But he also said his idea for the film would have involved Rocky's final fight taking place in the Roman Colosseum, and also the Pope is there, which would be Pope John Paul II at the time. So this obviously didn't happen. There is no Pope. There is no Roman Colosseum in Rocky III. But this was an idea Sylvester Stallone had, and he saw it as Rocky being the last gladiator battling it out in the Roman Colosseum, and I can see a sort of thematic way of doing that. I'm not really sure where the Pope would have fit in. I almost wish the Pope had climbed into the ring and tag teamed against over there, Mr. T, I guess. Rocky and the Pope fighting Mr. T, but I don't know.
Wait, does the Pope even go to boxing matches?
Not the real Pope, but anything goes in the Rocky universe, where, as we all know,
the fake Pope.
Yes, as we all know, in Rocky IV, Rocky ends communism with boxing, so anything really goes in the Rocky universe.
Well, I mean, he could always save this idea for Creed III. We could have the Roman Colosseum and the Pope in Creed III, right?
That's right. We could have
Francis actually would seem like he would attend a boxing match too.
Yeah, he's the hip new Pope, so I could see him being in Creed III, where Michael B. Jordan goes to meet the Pope for some reason.
Okay, so if this Luke Skywalker's mom being Boba Fett wasn't ridiculous enough, if Rocky III taking place alongside the Pope wasn't ridiculous enough, we have learned that they are making a Great Gatsby origin TV series with a young, hot, mixed-race Gatsby. HJ, what is going on here?
Yeah, so there is going to be a Great Gatsby origin series that's being developed at YouTube Premium, and it's called Gatz. So it reimagines the tragic figure in the F. Scott Fitzgerald novel as a mixed-race man based on some academic theories that posit that Jay Gatsby was actually mixed race in Fitzgerald's book. So this will be an origin story that is apparently retelling through a lens of the cultural lens of the Harlem Renaissance at the time. It's being developed by SC Sanseveri, and it's currently in the works at YouTube Premium. And yeah, it's an origin story, which kind of defeats the purpose of the book itself, which is an indictment of the fallacy of the American dream. And don't know how they'll actually make this into a TV series, or will stretch out his origin over the course of a TV series. But my bet is that he will be a hot young Gatsby who fucks and maybe solves mysteries.
Are you excited about this, HJ?
I don't know. I'm kind of intrigued by the mixed race angle. I don't know what this academic theory is, but it kind of makes sense in the context of the book. But I just don't know how I feel about an origin story, because it feels like it defeats the purpose of the book itself and of the message of Fitzgerald's book. So I don't know, man.
So one of our readers wrote in the PS of his email, he included a flowchart for responses Chris has to questions about announcements of projects no one asked for. And the flowchart goes, Peter asks Chris how he feels about this news. Chris sighs loudly, and then Chris gives a pained but thoughtful explanation. So, Chris, are you excited for Gatsby who fucks?
No. I like the idea of a show about the Harlem Renaissance. Like, that's a neat idea. I just don't want it to be this, because it really does defeat the whole point of the Great Gatsby. And Gatsby even tells everyone, not everyone, but he tells us his origin story in the book. It's not like it's a secret. So this just sounds like a bunch of executives were like, what's a recognizable property? Great Gatsby. Perfect. We'll do that. And I'd rather just make a original show about the Harlem Renaissance. Like, make something like The Knick. Like, that wasn't based on any properties. That was just a show set in the past, and it was great. Do something like that instead. But that's me. I'm not a successful executive, and this is probably why.
The other thing I don't get is, like, okay, the reason to adapt something would be because the story is good and it's going to connect with new audience, but they're not adapting. They're kind of basically just using that name to do a prequel story. They're trying to use that brand name to attract people in, but this is for YouTube Premium. So this is for young millennials who I'm judging a whole group here, but I'm guessing most of these the majority of these people probably have more relation to Gatsby in relation to the movie with Leo than actually reading the book. So I'm wondering, are people going to actually be interested in this, HD? I know you are our resident millennial, but you're actually, a book reading millennial. So
I am. Oh, I did actually have to read this book in high school, and I think a majority of people did. I hope.
Yeah. See,
I don't know if people,
so they'll be interested in the thing that's based in the book that they were forced to read in school.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, I don't think people are immediately drawn to the property, despite the IP being very recognizable. I think that, like what Chris is saying, the Harlem Renaissance angle is really interesting, and I would watch a series about that. But maybe because Great Gatsby is something that everyone's read in high school, they know it, they'll be like, oh, is this something that's like an edgy version of Gatsby? Maybe they'll be interested. Or maybe it'll provide fodder for all the Great Gatsby parties that, millennials and everyone likes to hold that also have nothing to do with the message of the book itself.
Wait, there are Great Gatsby parties? Is that a thing?
Wait, you don't know this, Chris?
No, I'm too. I guess I'm too old.
It's one of the most popular themed party themes, in which people say they're having a Great Gatsby party, but it's only vaguely 20s inspired.
Does someone get shot at the end and fall in the pool? Is that how the party ends?
If only.
Guys, you just don't know Gatz. That's gonna be that's gonna be the tagline. You thought you knew Gatz. You didn't.
Is it really called Gatz? Is that really the name of the show?
Yes, it's called.
Oh my god! It's like ants with the Z at the end of.
Yeah. Okay, I'm officially declaring the news for this week closed, and let's open the mailbag. Let's start with some responses. Yesterday we were talking about YouTube's ad-supported movies. They're offering 100 movies from MGM that you can watch with ads. Our listener, Don H., writes in that Vudu has been doing this for quite some time now, something I didn't know. He says he's not sure how long, but he started getting marketing emails back in March of 2017 offering free TV shows with ads. They have over 1,000 movies and TV shows to choose from, and they change up the selection monthly. Now, Chris, I know you watch a lot of streaming service and stuff. Do you use Vudu? Did you know about this?
I knew about it, but I intentionally didn't watch it. Don't watch it because I don't want the ads. I knew it had ads, and that's why I basically avoid it like the plague.
Yeah. I also I think earlier this week asked for some TV recommendations because I want some binge-worthy serial television, and we got a lot of responses. I actually am only going to read a few of them here, or actually a handful of them here. But Jacob Chandler from Mississippi wrote in with the recommendation of Amazon Prime's Patriot. He says it's a dark comedy about U.S. spy coming to Luxembourg to interfere with the Iranian election, and as generic and uninteresting as that sounds, it's actually one of the better shows in the sad hitman genre. It's really quirky and very complex plot, and a whole lot of ridiculousness somehow wrapped into a decent emotional struggle. Check it out for at least the first 3 episodes. If you don't like it, then you probably won't be able to get into it. Have either of you seen Patriot?
I haven't heard of this, I don't think.
I always see the ad for it when I go onto Amazon Prime, but I haven't watched it.
I will have to check this out. Okay, so Matt Y wrote in, and he's recommending Room 104. The first season was from the Duplass brothers. Zany and unexpected. Each half-hour episode takes place in the same nondescript motel room. The era of visitors and metaphysical rules are always different. The first season episodes split pretty evenly into a third of the episodes as junk, another third as good set, and a third of truly inspired storytelling. I'd recommend you check out episodes 2, Pizza Boy, 5, The Internet, and 7, The Missionaries. Season 2 is 3 episodes in and has been great. Last night, Michael Shannon played a Russian diplomat who sets up a date with a woman he met on the internet, played by Judy Greer. So I'm going to have to check that out. Chris, I think you have seen this show, right?
No, I haven't. I meant to check it out because it sounds really cool, and I especially like that it attracts people like Michael Shannon and Judy Greer. I just have yet to get around to seeing it.
Yeah, this kind of defies my definition of what I was looking for serialized, a serialized show, but I love the Duplass brothers, so I don't know why I haven't given this a chance yet. HT, have you watched it?
I haven't. I've heard of it, though. Yeah, it's an anthology series, right? Yeah. And so it's really intriguing, but I never got the chance to check it out. Maybe I will.
It kind of, the idea kind of reminds me of that, what was that movie that Quentin Tarantino was part of?
Four Rooms?
4 Rooms, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think only one of those was good, right?
Yeah, the Tarantino one was the only real good one. Oh, I guess the Robert Rodriguez one was pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was before he went downhill.
Yes.
Okay, Fred from Chattanooga, Tennessee, writes in that I should check out 6 Feet Under, which I have seen, The Shield, which I've seen part of, The Nick, the show that's directed by Steven Soderbergh, he calls fantastic, and The Underrated Banshee, another fantastic show. Mad Men, Leftovers, Deadwood. We got a lot of these kind of emails that's just like had a list of of shows, and it's just like hard to read these on the air. So I'm reading that one just to mention that fact. Roger writes in that I should check out one of the greatest sci-fi shows of all time, Babylon 5. It's free on Amazon Prime. The first season is a tad slow build, but it's just incredible, and you might want to check out The Misfits. It's on Hulu right now.
Misfits is really good. At least the first 2 seasons are, but then it kind of loses its original cast and isn't as fun. But that's a really great superhero, like kind of sexy superhero teen UK show. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I watched the first season of that, and I really liked it. I'm not sure why I didn't keep going. Has anybody here watched Babylon 5?
No.
Yeah, that's a gap in my sci-fi television. And I feel like if I went back to it right now, it would feel too dated, probably. Sean from Missouri writes in suggesting that I should watch X-Files or The Gilmore Girls, which I'm guessing both of those shows. I mean, from what I've seen of X-Files, that's very episodic. I know there's a narrative over the entire thing, but it's very thin, right?
Oh, that reminds me, Peter. Actually, have you seen Fringe?
I have seen Fringe. I've watched the whole Fringe. Fringe is good.
That
was quite episodic as well, though.
It was episodic, but then once they decided to just kind of lean completely into their sci-fi roots, they basically went to alternate reality. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, once they got to season 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever it was. I hate these people that recommend something. They're like, well, you have to sit through the slow first season that's not good, but I just can't. I just can't sit through 12 or 24 episodes of something to get to the good parts. Also, Errol L writes in from Los Angeles or Louisiana, I'm not sure, and he writes in a few suggestions. Banshee. He says he would argue it's the greatest action television show ever made. The fight scenes throughout the show get progressively more insane and unbelievable in the best ways. The only thing I'll say is you need to get over the initial premise, and you can do that. You'll have so much fun with the show. The final season not only was chosen to end by the creator instead of being canceled, brings everything home in a truly best way it all can. Has anybody seen Banshee here?
No, but that's the second recommendation for Banshee. I don't know the show.
Yeah, Rectify is another show he recommends. He says it's a bit of a slow burn, which makes me peter out of not even wanting to read that recommendation. I don't have time for a slow burn these days. Okay, I'll read what he says. He says a slow burn that will literally make you cry every episode, not for the reasons that Parenthood or This Is Us do. The dialogue and the uniqueness of the main character makes the show very much worth the time to invest. Chris, have you seen Rectify?
That sounds exhausting. Crying every episode. That's just gonna. I've been watching that Netflix show Dogs, and I've been crying every episode, and I'm ready for bed after it ends. I can't imagine watching multiple seasons of that.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Parenthood or Friday Night Lights?
No, I've never seen either. Everyone tells me to watch Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, but Jacob yelled at us for not watching Friday Night Lights yet. It's
so good, and I hate sports. I hate football. So it's just, I don't know. But that's one of those shows that'll make you cry every episode. Man Seeking Woman is another show that he recommended. He says it's hilarious, unique sketch type show that also is able to be tied together in a coherent story from season to season. And again, I feel they choose to end the show in just perfect points. Have either of you seen Man Seeking Woman?
No, I don't watch a lot of sketch shows because I don't like the, episodic sort of nature of it, even more so because it's short bits. But it sounds like it has a coherent story, as I said, so maybe I'll check it out.
Yeah. Peter Freeman from Gainesville, Virginia writes in with the suggestion of Person of Interest. The show ran 5 seasons, stars Jim Cavell and Michael Emerson. Jonathan Nolan was the showrunner. The first season was initially procedural with an overarching storyline, but by season 2, it became a full-blown serialized show. I believe it's available on Netflix. I watched the show for I think 2 seasons, and I kind of gave up on it. It was too, even when you claim it was full-blown serialized show, I think it was still too episodic. Were either of you a fan of that show?
No, I watched the first 3 episodes and stopped for the same reasons that you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never saw it.
Ki Chung writes in that we should definitely watch The Expanse. Last season was the best season of sci-fi currently on TV. I've heard many people recommending The Expanse. I've only watched the first 2 episodes, and I was watching it with my girlfriend Kitra, who just was not having it. So maybe I'm going to give it a go without her. Because I've heard so much good things about The Expanse, and I know neither of you watched The Expanse, right?
No.
Yeah. Mike T writes in suggesting Peep Show. It's a British comedy, 9 seasons, each better than the last, and it's serialized, very dark. One of the few comedies that warrants repeat viewings. It's on Hulu and Amazon Prime. Have either of you been to the Peep Show?
Been to the Peep Show.
Yes. No. Movie Geek Blog writes in that The Americans, The Good Wife are some of the best. And also, have you seen Murder 1? What is Murder 1? Have either of you guys seen Murder 1?
No.
No.
I feel like these shows are like on the fringe. Like I never hear anyone talking about these shows.
Well, I did ask for things that I probably wouldn't have seen, which is kind of funny because people are sending in recommendations like, have you seen Mad Men? I'm like, yes, I've seen Mad Men.
Have you ever heard of this show? It's called Frasier.
And David Chen from the Slash Filmcast tweeted me that he just heard the recent episode of Slash Daily, and if you have Hulu, I think you should check out these, pointing to classic episodes of ER. It's truly was groundbreaking and probably still holds up. So David Chen is in the side with Jacob in pushing ER. Do you guys have a history with ER at all? No. My wife and I are actually in the midst of watching it on Hulu, and we're in the much later seasons now, which are awful. But the first few seasons with the original cast are incredible. It's one of those shows that really does live up to the hype, at least for the first 5 seasons. I may have to give it a chance then.
You should, and then stop before it gets bad.
Gets bad. Okay, we actually have a question here. This one is Michael O. from Nashville, Tennessee writes in to ask a question about physical media. He wonders, when will retail stores like GameStop suffer the same fate as Blockbuster? Or will they? So I guess, our biggest physical media person here, Chris, right? You have a lot of physical media still.
Yeah.
Do you think... how long do you think physical media has left to it? And do you think a store like GameStop will suffer the same fate as Blockbuster?
I mean, I think physical media itself will always exist in some format, but I am surprised stuff like GameStop is even still around, because it just seems like more and more people are just downloading their games. I don't really play games, so I'm not as up to date on it, but I'm sure sooner or later those stores are going to suffer the same tragic fate as Blockbuster. But I do think physical media will always be around in some form. It won't be as prevalent as it once was, obviously, but it's still going to exist.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they're still making vinyl records, it's going to be around in that kind of more of a niche aspect. I do think, the next generation of gaming consoles, they're already talking about they won't have, DVD drives or whatever, that you'll be downloading the games from a server. And I think at that point, it's done for GameStop. I mean, GameStop, if you've walked into a GameStop in the last couple of years, you see that they see that future coming. Half that store is now Funko Pops, collectibles, geeky kind of collectibles, and they've even started selling board games, which I think shows you that they know the end is near. HT, What do you think? Do you think how many years does physical media have?
I'm also on the same boat of being surprised that GameStop is still around because anecdotally, I haven't been in a GameStop for I don't know, a decade at least, and there's still like several stores like around the country, which is surprising to me. And I feel like especially for video games, a lot of people tend to pre-order them because there's so much hype around their release and people want to get them as much as possible. So they just skip the store entirely.
Well, they have deals with the stores. Like if you, I'm not a big video gamer, but like if you pre-order a game at GameStop, you'll get a special like in-game thing that you couldn't get otherwise. So like, I think that is incentivizing people still going to the stores.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I that's good to know, but I do think that it's kind of written in the end. The end is kind of written for GameStop at some point. Although I will say, in terms of vinyls or even cassettes being sold, they're at their Urban Outfitters, for example, is kind of selling these like vinyls and cassettes as like novelty items, which I think is hilarious. I think at this point they're even selling mixed CDs, which is just so funny to me as novelty items. So I'm sure like as long as there's a nostalgia amongst the younger generation for a time of analog technology, then physical media will be around, but not in the way that it used to be.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like even, you go into a Best Buy, and there's still a few rows of like DVDs and Blu-rays. Like it's still kind of a big thing. It's not as big as when it once was. Like I remember when that whole middle section of the Best Buy was just the media section. Like when I worked there ages ago, decades ago at this point, like that whole middle section was the media section. So that was all CDs, and DVDs at the time. And now it's only like a few rows of like DVDs. But it's still there. And I'm wondering how long that's going to last. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, especially with like this Disney streaming service launching. Like I'm wondering how many people are actually going to be buying Disney releases if like they have access to everything on that streaming service for like $8 a month. Like it just doesn't seem like a viable thing.
At the same time, it's worth noting that nothing is permanent. I mean, look at Filmstruck. Everyone was so excited about that as I was, and now it's going away. So, I mean, obviously Disney has more money than Filmstruck, but you never know.
But I think even you, Chris, would bet your money that Disney streaming service will probably be around in 10 years, and probably wouldn't have bet your money that Filmstruck would have been around in 10 years.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm shocked if any of us will be around in 10 years, honestly, at this point. But
yeah. Okay, let's get to one last question. This one's kind of an interesting one. It's from a listener named Washim, who writes in that he's wondering what the best movie-going experience you can recommend when it comes to just visually enjoying a film. Super large screens really don't matter much to me. I feel like I can always sit closer if I want everything projected large. I'm mainly about contrast, color, clarity, and deep blacks and overall brightness. Are the premium offerings from standard digital projection really worth it when it comes to those visuals? If so, which theater chains stand out? Especially, can you rank based on visuals and not necessarily on sound, food, seats, etc.? A very specific question here. Chris, do you have any preference on just in terms of visual quality?
I mean, I feel like beggars can't be choosers anymore, especially where I live, where there aren't really great theaters. I will say one of the best theatrical experiences I ever had was I went to the Metrograph, which is in New York, and that's a fantastic theater. And I saw Carol on 35 millimeter right around Christmas time, and it was one of like the best experiences of my life. Like just the visual quality. I don't want to be one of those. I feel like people get too hung up over, film is, sacred. And if it's not actual film projection, it's, blah, blah, blah. But it does look amazing. It does look, it looks the way film should look in my mind.
Yeah.
You can see the grain, you can see the texture. I feel like digital projections sometimes looks too clean. as weird as that may sound, it looks too artificial. So, but like I said, beggars can't be choosers. Very few theaters offer that these days. So, as long as
I don't think he's necessarily asking about film projection, but just like the best overall, visual experience.
I mean, for me, the best experience is an empty theater where I'm the only one there. No one's eating friggin' chips behind me. I'm just alone, and the image never blurs or flips upside down. As long as that happens, because I've been in theaters where the image will literally accidentally flip upside down because no one, most theaters now, they don't even have projectionists. They have machines running their projectors because it's cheaper and you can automate all of that, and there's no one manning the store, so to speak.
Yeah, but the digital file shouldn't flip upside down.
Hey, I don't ask me how it's happened.
I know he's not asking about food, but you did mention people munching on stuff behind you. Have you ever been to an Alamo Drafthouse or to one of those kind of theaters?
No, I haven't, and
I'm curious what you would think about that.
I am too, because I've always wanted to visit an Alamo because I hear such great things about it. But I don't know. I really hate when people are eating around me. Like, I have a friend. He's like, he can't go to the movies unless he gets a snack, and I never get snacks at the movies. I'm just there for the movie. But I'm a lunatic, so I don't know.
I'm a snacker. I love popcorn, so I definitely would not be able to go to a movie with you, Chris.
Yeah. I see. It's very hard for me to differentiate just the visual quality and not the sound, the seats, and everything. I feel like it all adds up to an experience to me, and I also don't agree with this guy that, like, if I want a bigger screen, I could just sit closer to the screen. That sounds like someone, and he even says in his letter that he doesn't have a true IMAX screen near him. So that sounds like someone that hasn't actually experienced the true IMAX screen. But I would say that the best projection I've gotten recently, outside of, obviously I see a lot of movies on studio lots, and some of that projection and stuff is some of the best because, they have people that actually care about it. And there's filmmakers actually, editing and grading their, films in those. So, but outside of that, I really like the Dolby cinemas. Like, I know AMC has them, sometimes combined with their Prime seats. That 4K projection, the contrast. Some of the theaters play this thing that is kind of like this video before that kind of showcases the contrast and the colors and everything. And at the end of it, it is a black screen. And then some words come on the screen and it says, yes, the projector's still on. Because, like, it's that black of a screen that, like, usually when you have the projector on and it's a black screen, it's still kind of like a gray because there's some light hidden in the screen. It's that impressive. So for my money, I think I'm liking the Dolby and Prime cinemas, but it's also about the sound. You have that good Atmos sound. You have those reclining seats. I know this guy doesn't really care about either of those. I think IMAX also, the digital, I actually prefer the digital IMAX now to the real IMAX because I think those screens, the real IMAX, now that they're projecting digitally on those big screens, it loses something unless it's a real IMAX film being projected on one of those real IMAX screens. I think the digital IMAX is that 4K projection and that sound and it is great. You just got to kind of sit, further back. HC, do you have any preference in theaters visually?
So I haven't had the chance to test out a lot of theaters recently, but I did get the AMC A-List recently, and I was able to try out Dolby for the first time. And I watched A Star is Born in a Dolby theater, and it was just a game-changing experience for me. I was like, I never been, I don't think I'd ever been to a Dolby theater before. So just like the crisp, like deep black colors, the surround sound by Atmos, it was just an amazing experience because, and I remember like it kind of reverberating a lot with that whenever you like song that played, and I believe
they actually have subwoofers underneath the seats, which I think is probably what you felt in most of those theaters. Yeah, it's incredible. Like it almost, it's hard to compare. I know we talk a lot about this AMC A-List subscription, And it was like, oh, I could see this movie and the matinee and get this price. But like, once you start doing this and you see, all you do is want to see the movies in these Dolby or Prime theaters because it's like the best way to see a movie.
Yeah, and like Dolby definitely changed my mind too, because I went a week later to see First Man in IMAX, and it wasn't nearly as like a visceral of an experience as Dolby was, which was really fascinating to me. And I had wished I'd gone to see First Man in Dolby, which I feel like I would have gotten that full experience out of it.
Chris, have you had any experience with Dolby or Prime?
I haven't. Now I really want to check it out. I was actually just Googling to see if there's a Dolby theater near me, and there really isn't because I live in the dead zone.
Oh,
so
damn. It is very impressive, and I think also with this AMC A-list, because everybody can buy that has those subscriptions can get tickets to like IMAX and the Prime. Those are like the bigger price theaters. I'm noticing those are selling out. At least in LA, they're selling out much quicker than they used to. And some of my theaters are actually already like adding a Dolby theater on to the, or converting one of the theaters into a Dolby theater, like an additional Dolby theater. So I love AMC A-List thus far because it's improving my options of seeing movies quite a bit. But I'm not sure if we answered this guy's question.
I think we did.
We did? Okay.
Probably.
It's a very specific question. It's hard to narrow it down. We did our best.
Yeah. And he's in Michigan, and he's talking about how he, doesn't have any good theater chains. He has Cinemark and MJR. I don't even know what that is. But yeah, anyways, I would say if you can, he says he has an AMC near you, check out your closest like Prime or Dolby Cinema. I know you don't really care about the sound and stuff, but I don't know. I just think that experience is incredible. But we have officially gone over, and we've hit the end of today's Slash Film Daily. HT, where can people find more of your work online?
You can find me every day at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at HTranBuoy.
Chris, where can we find you?
I'm also slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at Evangelista413. And don't forget to send in your life advice questions. I'm itching to answer more.
Yes, we need like it doesn't have to be about movies. It can be like personal, relationship questions. Like, what kind of questions are you looking for, Chris?
Anything and everything. Give me everything. The more personal, the better. Expose yourself to me. I want you to lay your soul bare to me, Chris Evangelista, because I'm an expert in all things.
Chris wants like a really uncomfortable question is what he wants. You can send those to peter@slashfilm.com, and you can also send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns for the mailbag, also at peter@slashfilm.com. You can find me online at slashfilm on all social media. You can find all the stories we talked about in today's podcast on slashfilm.com, and I will also include all the emails that we kind of basically rushed through. So if you want to read them in depth, they're in the show notes. This podcast, Slash Film Daily, is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. And please go to iTunes, give us a 5-star rating. Write us a blurb telling everybody why you like this show, and we'll see you tomorrow.